Hello, MennoNerds. Here I am outside of my wonderful garden here in Valley, Pennsylvania, and I would like to talk to you about making trouble in a slightly different way. I really appreciated Will's statements and his analogy from hockey and the stuff that went on in Vancouver about making trouble and how sometimes the trouble that happens is because of what we ourselves do. And I think that really very much applies to what goes on within our churches, within our congregations. We make a lot of the space that is there for trouble by ourselves, doing the things that we should not be doing when it comes to a church. Not loving people, not giving a ministry of peace and love to people, not making space for people to approach God. And actually, I think if we think about the way that Jesus caused trouble, the one time that he was really, by the world standards even, considered a troublemaker, his tirade, if you would, in the temple in Jerusalem, that was actually within the church, if you want to think about it. He was actually speaking to the religious people as a religious person about what goes on in the religious circles. And in some ways, I think that's kind of acceptable. I think Paul even backs it up in that he talks about how we ourselves within the church, within the congregations, within the community, need to keep each other accountable, need to speak out against people who are, not exactly acting Christian. So I think there is some space for being a troublemaker within the Christian community. But I think what I'm more concerned about is what is our status of being a troublemaker within the world around us. And I think sometimes we don't look much different. I think when it comes to how we act in the world around us, whether you are a conservative or a progressive, we don't look much different. And I find a problem with that. I think we're supposed to be different. We're supposed to act different. We're supposed to have different priorities, different ways of doing things, different ways of approaching people, different ways of addressing the ills of society. And if all we're doing is looking just like every other group of people out there making noise, making trouble in the world, then what's the point? We're supposed to be a city on a hill, something that the world is supposed to look to and say, this is what it's supposed to look like. Now, I'm not saying we need to put ourselves up there as any particular paragons of virtue, that we are somehow perfect in everything, but we're supposed to lead the way. We're the light. We're the salt. We are the mustard seed that is growing into something spectacular, making space in the world. And when I look at sometimes the way that we as Christians act in the world, again, whether you're conservative or progressive, we don't look different. I'm thinking of certain stories, especially, again, of Jesus. They were plotting to kill him before he did his thing in the temple. Why? Because he was acting different. He was doing things against the status quo, and the people in power didn't like it. Paul, all he was doing was preaching the gospel, telling people, hey, come to Jesus, come to this God, Yahweh. And he threatened the livelihood of a bunch of silver makers. And that caused trouble. There's a story in the book of Colossians about Nympha. And if you read the book Colossians Remixed, it's interesting. She's called a troublemaker because she treats her slaves differently, treats her workers differently. I point out in my chapter in our book that we MennoNerds wrote called A Living Alternative that, if we act differently, if we treat the world around us differently, we'll be seen as troublemakers. We'll be seen as a threat. We will be starving the beast, and by doing so, bring on trouble on ourselves. That's the kind of trouble that I think we're probably going to find a better use for than some of the things that we do that, again, don't look much different than the world around us. Thanks.